I'm Alan Robarge, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Welcome to the new Love Addiction, where we're not talking about addiction, we're talking about attachment injuries and healing attachment trauma. On this video, let's continue to explore ways in which sometimes we are emotionally guarded, emotionally unavailable, or that we notice this in other people, that if a person is emotionally unavailable, what are some of the very subtle ways that they can continue to perpetuate the disconnect and the limitation on joining in emotional vulnerability and emotional openness. And perhaps this is you. So this goes both ways. We're very sophisticated people, and we employ these strategies to monitor, to maneuver, to keep some people out and create distance, and then to try to invite other people in. If it happens to do with your romantic partner, your spouse, if it happens to do with a family member, chances are that you err on the side of wanting more emotional connection. And then those times when you're vulnerable, when you're afraid, you too might engage in some behaviors and some strategies, even subconsciously. You're not like purposefully doing this, but some ways that you can create a boundary and a barrier that keep another person distant. If you're on the receiving end of this can really light up your nervous system like a Christmas tree. It can trigger anxiety and confusion and frustration and anger. For some people, it could trigger feeling nauseous. It could trigger feeling panic. One reason why it gets worse, if you're on the receiving end and you're noticing these body symptoms in the realm of anxiety and panic, is that this is akin to a trauma response. If this is coming from emotional developmental trauma that has been untreated, a rule of thumb, this is not an absolutely set in stone, but the idea is that trauma symptoms that go untreated and unaddressed, and trauma energy looping on itself over the years, 5 years, 10 years, however long that you're not really aware that this is happening, that it can increase and compound, which means get worse. And so it's very possible that you have family members or you're in a relationship with a partner and you're pretty much relating the same way you did 10 years ago, but at this point your nervous system is fried. Like, you cannot handle it anymore. Like, this is so frustrating that you want emotional closeness, emotional connection, emotional exchange, and it's not happening. So, a couple of videos that I'm making right now, all coming out at the same time, are exploring different specific presentations or ways in which we do this, or the other loved one that you're with, the way that they're keeping themselves emotionally unavailable. So on this video, what's one way that people do that? And it has to do with selective listening or selective hearing. In its most extreme form, we're going to call it being ignored. So you could send a text, you could send an email, obviously it's in written form, and you're including information about yourself that you want to reveal to the other person, and this information you're including are actually invitations to engage and invitations for exchange. And the person on the receiving end, again, it could be your partner, your spouse, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. It could also be a family member, extended family member, siblings. It could be a parent. If you're, now in your adult years, you're relating to your parent, adult to adult, or adult child to parent. And you are attempting to reveal yourself. You're attempting to share, and there's no response. It's just not acknowledged. So this also translates if you're talking on the phone, if you're in person, if you're going out to dinner, and you are attempting to invite, and let's say you're being reasonable. You're not, you don't need to create some incredibly painful, grief-laden, heavy let's focus on family dysfunction and suffering. I mean, you want to have a reasonably mature, emotionally honest conversation, and you begin to share some of your experience, and whatever you say, it just doesn't register. It's just not heard. Period. You're not. The phrase we use that attachment injuries occur when we feel that we have not been seen, known, heard, and understood. And I'll repeat that: seen, known, heard, and understood. So right now we're talking about the literal hearing, literally someone listening. And as you know, there's different levels of being heard. The phrase deep listening, the phrase holding space for someone. We could talk about a container, a therapy word that comes up a lot in therapy is this idea we have this shared container, this shared space. And if we're really, going to talk about from a clinical perspective, this is often referred to as intersubjective field. The intersubjective field is where we exist. There's you, there's me, and then there's this space between us where you and I become a we. We're together. And if we're thinking of this as some kind of conceptual idea of how does this happen and how do our brains come together, this is the intersubjective field, and we create connection. One way that we feel distress and we feel so it's so painful because we are attempting to hang out in that experience of a we. We want to feel like we are a we, and that when the person you're with, when your partner, when your spouse is just not hearing you, has selective hearing. And so that you could very directly say, you could make a demand, you could create an invitation, you could reveal something about yourself, and very quickly the conversation changes and the person says, where's the remote? I need to change the TV channel. I'm going to the kitchen to get some popcorn. Do you need anything? And this experience is so surreal and crazy making because to repeatedly have your experience denied, your invitation denied, it's like your brain can melt down. It starts looping on itself. And let's raise the stakes. Let's make it actually, I just gave an example where I said the content is not, grief laden or really heavy. Let's say it's a call for help. Let's say you're really struggling in this relationship with your partner and you need to have a heart-to-heart in a way that says, let's imagine the house is on fire. Not literally, I'm using this as an example, we're creating a metaphor. If the house is on fire and you go to someone and you can't, you want to say, there's something really important I need to tell you. The roof is on fire, the house is burning down right now as we speak, and I need to let you know this because smoke is filling up in the living room as we sit here and watch TV. Well, we have an assumption, just as a human being, we have an assumption that if we present urgency and if we present something that's very, very important, and again, this is just an analogy of saying the house is on fire, we need people to respond. We need someone to immediately acknowledge your reality will be affirmed when the other person immediately gets out of their chair and all of a sudden says, oh wow, the whole living room is full of smoke. I totally agree with you. I know what is happening. This is scary. This is painful. And then looks at you and says, how's your breathing? Is your breathing obstructed? There's an immediate response, and even for a person to do that much, we haven't even gotten rid of the smoke, we haven't even gotten out of the living room to get a breath of fresh air, we have not called the fire department, and we have not even put out the fire. But just to have someone stand up in that moment, and this, even that is a metaphor, like they emotionally stand up, they emotionally say, hey, I can see that you're choking on all of this smoke in our relationship due to the fact that we're not engaged emotionally, and that our emotional needs are so sparse, or the satisfaction of an emotional exchange here is so lacking that it's like suffocating on smoke. And yet we're supposed to sit there in the living room, eat popcorn, and watch a movie together, and smile and pretend that everything is okay, that I'll just breathe smoke all night, and and it's okay for this person, the partner, the other family member. I guess this is okay. So crazy making, isn't it? If you are in this situation, empathy to you. I really understand from a place of compassion, empathy to you. And if you are in this place, if this is who you are, compassion to you, empathy, I really understand that this is painful stuff. To back up, I really just was focusing on your experience of what it's like to be in that moment. We're going to pull out a little bit and just repeat. What we're looking at is how a person who wants to stay emotionally disengaged, who's emotionally withdrawn, who is not offering a consistent level of emotional engagement. One way that they can do this is through selective hearing and through outright ignoring what you have just said. And if they're really good at it, they don't even know they're doing it. And if they're really good at it, they'll do it with a sense of grace, because they have trained this. We're talking years and years, and they probably learned this in their family. So they're not trying to be an asshole. Some people are. That's a whole different subset of this conversation, which I'm not talking about that. But in general, they're not trying to be a jerk about it. They're not trying to purposefully make you feel so crushed due to being rejected. They're not trying to, get any satisfaction of forcing you to breathe in smoke evening after, to sit in a house that's on fire and burning constantly. Really, they're good people. They're lovely people. You wouldn't have picked them otherwise, or it's your family member and you love them because you're the family member. But usually this presentation and their ability to ignore you, and their ability to ignore actual content that you're sharing, it's so folded into a very sophisticated presentation that it's done with grace, and it's very smooth. And how do I know this? Why is this true? Because many times, and this shows up in couples counseling, you can see it when couples come into counseling together, when this is pointed out to the person who is outright ignoring, they really have no idea that they're doing this. It's so not only are they ignoring you, I guess hopefully what I'm saying here has some satisfaction. Not only are they ignoring you, but they're really ignoring themselves. They're so trained, they've been trained in their brain to not pay attention to interpersonal relating, to not pay attention to emotional cues that are creating invitation. They have been so trained to ignore when the house is on fire, and to ignore when there is an emotional need, when their partner is making a demand of them to join them, when their partner has an emotional need. They've trained themselves through their family history. They've been in their family system. This is how they relate, and this is what they do to themselves. So, compassion to knowing that that's their history, and also compassion to you in that it will be incredibly frustrating and outright painful. Each time you keep bumping up against, how is it that you keep saying very clearly, creating invitations, sometimes being completely direct, I need to talk about this, and repeatedly it's just ignored, you're just not heard. I hope this video was helpful. If you like it and want to see more just like it, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, if you want to explore and discuss topics just like this, there is a Facebook group called The New Love Addiction, and you're welcome to join that group. And then finally, if you would like to learn more about me, I do work with clients. I offer coaching through telephone consulting and coaching. If that interests you, you can learn more about me as well as notice some of my blogs on my website at alanrobarge.com. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.